Welcome back to movingprofessional.com. So this video is in response to a question I got from Instagram from Trav English. Wanted to discuss bilateral ankle stiffness. What are the guiding principles? Where do you start? So I'm assuming when he says bilateral ankle stiffness, he's talking more towards dorsiflexion. So that's what I'll address here because that tends to be where you see the most limitations. So the place that I would start, and guiding principles wise, the thing that I want to look at is understanding what is dorsiflexion from a functional standpoint. Like, where do we use it? Why do we need it? So the most obvious way to look at it is we can look at a full squat. We can also look at the idea of just absorbing into the ground, that we're kind of compressing into the ground. So some terms that we can think of with ankle dorsiflexion could be ankle pronation, which is the kind of broader triplanar term for what we would be looking at functionally. So ankle pronation would be a combination of dorsiflexion, eversion, and abduction. And what that would look like on the ground is basically that the foot is getting just more into the ground, it's getting flatter into the ground. Oftentimes pronation sort of gets a bad rap as if it's some type of disease or something like that. But oftentimes it becomes a very limiting factor for ankle dorsiflexion is that the foot can't actually flatten out into the earth that we can't absorb. So with that being said, one of the things I want to look at in people is the whole body ability to dorsiflex in standing. So we will look at the rib position and the pelvis position. We want to be able to keep the ribs over the pelvis while the knees move forward over the middle of the foot. All right, and this should be an active process where we keep this as is, but then actively we're trying to bend the knees, which is a hamstring idea. So we're trying to engage the hamstring subtly to allow the knee to move more forward. At the same time, the heel needs to stay down or even be pulled back, which again is a hamstring cue. So if I think about bending my heel to my butt, that's going to increase some hamstring contraction there. When my feet are planted, I'm thinking about pulling my heel back while my sit bone moves to the back of the knee, and that can move my knee forward. So that creates the closed chain version of ankle dorsiflexion. Now, a lot of things can go wrong in the attempt there. So the compensations that you'll usually see, one will start up higher, where it's almost impossible for people to keep that rib cage over the pelvis. So the rib cage moves forward, the tailbone and the sacrum move back, the knee's able to still go forward, and it'll feel like you're getting more of a stretch here, but that's not what we're looking for when we're looking at pure dorsiflexion, because again, we want to be able to compress the body into the ground. We want the knee to be able to go forward. So it's important not to seek out a stretch in the Achilles tendon. That may happen, but it's almost a secondary effect of trying to maintain our direction that we're going for here. So we really just want to bring the shin forward over the foot, and we want to try to keep it as central as possible. So we look at this position first. Can you keep the rib cage over the pelvis? Can we actively move the knee forward? There should be a little bit of a hamstring engagement here. Or if we lose that, then we're really losing our direction for dorsiflexion. So to make that a little bit easier, because as we start getting into this position and we hang out here, a lot of times the quads get so tired just being in this position that it's hard to spend time here. Plus we may get into the patellofemoral joint a little bit and people may start getting some knee issues. So just by bringing the foot up, now we can still move in that same direction. We can still find hamstring. We can still try to keep the rib cage over the pelvis. And we're able to do that without as much strain up higher, so this becomes more about the ankle now. All right, so now once we get into this position, the one thing we want to really be aware of is the front of the shin, the muscles in the anterior leg are going to try to guard and block us moving in this direction. So once we get here, it can be very valuable to add some isometrics around that foot ankle and also just up the chain a little bit. All right, so tied into any hold position, any stretch, if we will have to be some breath work combined to some directional isometrics. So in this case, the direction of my inhale should expand me, right? So if I inhale and I get big in the belly, I also want to think about maybe going more towards supination, which would be a little bit of a reciprocal inhibition here. So I might curl my toes a little bit on the inhale, and then when I exhale, I can allow my foot to flatten out. I can move more into pronation, compress myself more into the ground. All right, I might even try to spread the toes a little bit here. All right, then the next inhale, I'm going to expand, and I'm going to try to grip the ground, move more into a supination of the foot, and then exhale, compress a little deeper. All right, so the whole time I'm in this position, I want to make sure that I don't start to lose my pelvic position, lose my sacral position, or my ribcage position. I want to try to stay here. It can be helpful to add a little bit of a reach because that keeps my ribcage back, and it'll give me a little bit more ability to keep my pelvis where I want it here, so that the knee is actively moving forward over the ankle that's staying fixed, and I'm actually pulling back through the heel. So you get some hamstring activity there. So that's the guiding movement that I usually like to see, or guiding position I like to assess. And then what I want to see is, can people get a little springy in this position? Because if we're looking at the Achilles tendon, which if you lose ankle dorsiflexion, you'll tend to lose some elasticity in that tendon as well. The value there is this kind of elastic recoil that we're looking for. So we want to see, can that improve after we do a little bit of work in that direction? The other thing to use other than the wedge, which can be helpful to really get this idea of flattening the foot and allowing it to absorb and compress into the ground, would be a massage ball of some type. Because we are able now to smush into this ball, so it's helpful that we have a ball that's not too firm, that it doesn't allow us to kind of smush it, because we want that ball to sort of morph into the undersurface of the foot and spread our foot wide. So if I put that ball into the front of my foot, I can really do the same action where I keep my ribs over my pelvis, I try to bring the knee forward, and then I sink, 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 and then I can add the same directional isometrics. So if I inhale, I'm going to try to supinate, maybe curl my toes a little bit, expand, and then the exhale, I compress inward and I try to flatten my foot even more over the ball. So the heel is staying down here, the ball is on the front portion of the foot. So I'm promoting more dorsiflexion, but I'm really trying to compress on that exhale. And then the inhale, I'm just creating a little bit of reciprocal inhibition. So I'm going to create supination I'm going to contract those muscles so then on the next exhale I can sink even deeper and compress even deeper into that ankle dorsiflexion. All right, so utilizing those two movements, we can take this position and start to use that as an assessment for how good is our dorsiflexion actually becoming. When we add the isometrics, we can actually take some of the guarding that commonly happens in the front of the leg and allow that to calm down so that we're able to continue to move forward. One of the things I find with dorsiflexion in my own experience, I've had a lot of ankle injuries, a lot of ankle stiffness being a basketball player in a former life, is that it's really hard to actually understand the direction that you're trying to go with dorsiflexion without some type of compensation, and then it's hard to create force in that proper direction. All right, so the starting point would just be to understand this position here of trying not to lose your pelvis, not to lose your rib cage, and don't seek out a stretch so much, but seek sinking into the ground. All right, so I hope that's helpful. There's more that can be discussed here, but I think that's a good starting point. And just it's often something that people aren't looking at this way. They're looking to stretch and oftentimes being maybe a little bit too specific with the joint and not looking at it as a full body endeavor. If you have any further questions, you go to movementprofessional.com. I'll see you next time.